Hello, welcome to the Shyamcast. My name's Brett,
My name is Shyam.
and thank you for being with us today. So today's topic of conversation is knowledge. Prabhuji, this is a very broad topic, a lot of places we could go, but Bhagavad Gita does talk a lot about knowledge. There are 3 chapters, I think, with knowledge in the title of the chapter. Chapter 4 is called Transcendental Knowledge. Chapter 7 is Knowledge of the Absolute. Chapter 9 is the Most Confidential Knowledge. So it's a topic that recurs again and again. And we've been talking about the material modes of nature for the last couple of episodes. And we'll touch on those again. There are 3 verses in the 18th chapter that describe knowledge in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But why don't we just start by talking about knowledge as it's defined in Bhagavad Gita or as it's described in Bhagavad Gita? So when we think of knowledge generally, we might think of different facts that we know or different skills and abilities that we've picked up because we've learned the process of how to do it. So mathematics could be my knowledge of, mathematics could be an example of knowledge. What do we mean by knowledge in a more spiritual sense, as Bhagavad Gita defines it?
The first time I heard knowledge from Bhagavad Gita, it seems like a very foreign concept. Oh, really? This is what is knowledge is? Because how we are born and brought up, how we see knowledge is very different from how Krishna describes knowledge. One way I like to see is when we ask this question, what is knowledge? It will become clarified when we ask ourselves this question, what is not knowledge? Like when we say, the opposite of knowledge is nescience, ignorance. So what do we mean when we say, oh, we are in ignorance, or we are covered by nescience? And where we understand that, it's easy to understand what actually knowledge is. So, like, what is ignorance? Ignorance of the self, ignorance of who we really are, ignorance of the divine, ignorance of our relationship, our true identity. And when you revert that, then what comes out is knowledge.
So in that case, what is not knowledge then? How can we think of, what is it? Nescience is a word that's used a lot in Bhagavad Gita. What is that?
Forgetfulness of our true identity, of who we really are. And this is the first thing that Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter. He says the beginning of knowledge is we are spiritual beings. So that's where the knowledge begins.
Yeah. Well, just thinking about, my own quest for knowledge, my own search for knowledge in spirituality, I think a lot of people go into, the thought comes into your mind, basically, what else is there, or who am I? I think that's a big question across any, spiritual tradition that you hear. Who am I? What am I really? Am I just this body? Am I my thoughts? If you really consider it, it can become confusing. You have an idea in your head, or you have a concept of who I am, and the more you search into it, the more you realize you don't really know. At least that was, that's my experience. So it is significant that, as you say, the first thing that Krishna discusses with Arjuna is, this is who you really are.
That's the beginning of knowledge. Like, you heard about the word Vedas? They are very popular.
The Vedas?
The Vedas?
Yeah.
What does the word Veda means?
Knowledge, I believe.
Yes. Veda means to know or knowledge. So the word Veda is to get knowledge. And this book Bhagavad Gita is about getting to know ourselves. Krishna describes what is the perfection of knowledge. Like, who can say, I have attained knowledge? Who can say, yes, this person is in knowledge? Krishna describes the symptoms of that 3 times in Bhagavad Gita. Should we discuss that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So, so first we can see what Krishna says about what is the symptom of one who is in full knowledge. And the first thing Krishna speaks in this respect is in chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, verse 35. So, can I have the privilege to read it for everyone?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So Krishna says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme. So Krishna says, when you have knowledge, you will see that all living beings are part of the Supreme. One thing is I know myself, one thing is I realize myself, and one thing is when I realize myself, I see everything from the same perspective. And then if I am living with that perspective, I am living in knowledge. There is one more, this is 4th chapter. Then Krishna speaks in 5:18, something interesting. And then we'll summarize once we read.
Sure. Yeah, I have one point or one question to bring up regarding that verse too. Yeah.
Okay. Then in number 18, Krishna says, the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Do you relate these 2 verses?
Can I relate these 2 verses?
Yeah, same thing Krishna is speaking.
So equal vision,
Yes.
spiritual vision.
Means you see everyone from a spiritual platform. And the previous verse also Krishna says, one who sees that all are my part. All are part and parcel of me. And same thing, one sees them with the equal vision. Same thing. There Krishna says, one who is in knowledge sees like this. Here Krishna says, by the virtue of true knowledge, he sees with the equal vision. Same thing. And same Krishna describes in 18th chapter, verse number 20. We can discuss this in more detail also, but just to give a perspective, Krishna speaks about knowledge and goodness. And Krishna says that knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities. One undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities. Again, seeing everyone as spirit, souls, part and parcel of Krishna. So Krishna says one who sees in this way, 3 times he says, 4th chapter, 5th chapter, 18th chapter. By the virtue of true knowledge, he sees like this. So knowledge means how we perceive this world, how we perceive ourselves. Am I seeing everything as it is with the reality, true reality? Then I am in knowledge. But if I am seeing from a physical, material perspective, then it becomes material knowledge, or we see knowledge in mode of passion.
Could you read the mode of passion verse as well, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
Just briefly.
Yeah. That knowledge by which one sees that in every different body there is a different type of living entity, you should understand to be in the mode of passion. So the knowledge by which one sees, hey, here is a dog, here is a cat, here is a poor man, here is a rich man, here is a beautiful man, here is an ugly man. Here is a successful man, here is not so successful man. When we see from a physical perspective, bodily conception, we are seeing in a mode of passion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that helps to read that verse just because that's where, honestly, that's where a lot of us are, right? We are in a position where it seems like the obvious fact that I'm this one, you're that one, that over there is a dog, that over there is a bug, whatever it is. And it's also very easy to identify people with their situation in life, whether they're rich or poor, what their level of attractiveness is, what their job is. Say that is a lawyer. Yeah. It's sort of a way of saying that the identity of that person is a lawyer, rather than they're a spiritual soul or a spiritual entity, and the work that they happen to do when they're in this body is that they practice law. I was trying to think of an example of how do you test your knowledge, or how do you how can you test, like, see where am I at, what kind of knowledge do I have? And I just I looked out my window of my bedroom and I saw just the different things that are there. There's a person walking by on the sidewalk, there's a tree in the neighbor's yard, there are birds sitting in the tree, there are birds flying around, there's a squirrel hopping around in the yard. If I saw closer, I would see all of the different insects that were flying around, crawling on the ground. So there's life everywhere, everywhere we look, even just in a view out the window that seems like the same old thing that I see every day. So I don't witness all of that happening in that way, where I see all of these, distinct life forms. And I certainly don't see all of them as the same thing. I don't see the tree and the bird in the tree and say those things are both a part of the same undivided spiritual nature.
We see only when we talk about it. Then we see, and then when we are living a normal life, we are not able to see like that. But when we discuss, we see that makes sense. So we have an understanding, but we don't have knowledge.
So let's maybe talk about that a little bit. We have an understanding, but we don't have knowledge. So we understand the things that we perceive through our senses. Is that what you would say? Like we understand, I see this. I see the differences between these two things.
Plus, I may understand they are spirit souls because I have read. I may understand they are part and parcel of divine. But I understand only when I remember this verse, or when we talk with somebody. Then that makes sense to me. But when I'm living a normal life, I may not be able to see that all the time. So there is something called theoretical understanding, and there is something called realization. Knowledge is something which is realized. When something is realized, it's yours. When something is theoretical, there is an understanding. Conceptually, we are clear, but we haven't got that vision yet. That's why Krishna says, one who has true knowledge, he sees like this.
And a lot of our knowledge is theoretical then in that sense.
Yes.
So for example, we know about DNA. We know that we are human beings and that we share, a particular set of DNA. And a lot of times when people might say a phrase like, we're all the same thing, there's many instances, there's times when people will say something very similar to this. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. They'll say something along the lines of, we're all the same thing. We all come from the same place. Maybe they only mean that we're human beings, because there's that knowledge, there's that understanding that we share this DNA, we come from common ancestors. But, this goes a lot deeper. This is talking about life in general, the life force
Mm-hmm.
that guides all living entities
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The journey begins with understanding. The journey begins with inquisitiveness, like hearing such podcasts. We get an understanding, and then gradually we develop realization. And Krishna speaks about how to get to realizing it from understanding it.
Mm. What you might call the process of
The process of
self-realization.
acquiring knowledge.
Of acquiring knowledge. Yeah. So what is that process then?
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's a wonderful question. There are 2 verses Krishna speaks, 3 verses Krishna speaks how to acquire knowledge. And it begins with chapter 4, verse number 34. Can I read it?
Of course.
Should I read the Sanskrit for a change?
If you like.
Tatvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master.
Mm.
Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge onto you because he has seen the truth. We cannot get knowledge from somebody who doesn't have. So Krishna says, and why he is able to impart knowledge? Because he has seen the truth. We can acquire knowledge only from self-realized souls because they have seen the truth.
And I think the first verse you read mentioned that as well. Or one of them. I think it might have been the first one, but
yes, the first one.
You have to ask a self-realized soul can show you, basically. So
Yes.
This is the importance of a teacher, of a
Yes.
spiritual teacher,
Yes.
and perhaps most importantly, a qualified spiritual teacher.
Yes. And then 2 qualities. One is inquiry has to be submissive. Submissive means with the eagerness to understand. Opposite to that is challenging spirit. Why should I believe? Submissive. I may not understand, but the inquiry is submissive. Somehow, like we can say to a teacher, somehow I'm not able to understand, I'm not able to appreciate. Can you speak something more about it? Can you help me understand more? This is submissive. We cannot be like blind followers. The whole Bhagavad Gita is like question answer, but it's submissive by nature. Another is service. Because knowledge is not transferred by words. Knowledge is transferred from the heart. And knowledge is transferred with blessings. Knowledge is something that comes from within the heart. When we hear the words and when the blessings come from within the heart, those words internally resonate. And something within us will say, that makes sense. So now blessings and words we hear when combined translate into a realization. It brings conviction. Knowledge means conviction. Yes, that makes sense. So it really comes from within the heart. But the process is through a spiritual master combined with what comes from within the heart.
How do we know that we have the right spiritual master? How do we know that the teacher or the guru who we've accepted or who we are hearing from is really, as you know, a self-realized soul?
Thank you. Beautiful question. First qualification, he should speak the words of authority. He should resonate with what the authorized books like Bhagavad Gita, like the Vedas, what they speak. There is an example in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is advanced study of Bhagavad Gita, which says if Guru speaks against scriptures, reject the Guru. Basis is scriptures. The scriptures are referred to as the breathing of the divine.
It's very nice.
It
Breathing of the divine.
Yeah.
Would the Bible count as one of these scriptures,
Well,
for example?
yeah, there is one section of Vedas that does predict appearance of a Masiha, genuine son of the divine, self-realized. But the knowledge has been changed many times. It has changed, so many versions have come. And what is really what Masiha spoke and what is spoken by added or deleted, this is unknown. But the thing with Bhagavad Gita, although there are thousands of versions, the Sanskrit never changes. You refer to a Gita 500 years back, 1000 years back, 2000 years back. Sanskrit is the same. People may have given different interpretations. The true knowledge never changed. So must repeat the authorized words.
And this is the first qualification.
This is the first
comes from
qualification.
scriptures. Their knowledge comes from scriptures.
Second, he must be living that by his example. I cannot speak and then I have another life which is contrary to what is mentioned. Then empowerment won't be there. One should be practicing it oneself.
This is a very nice, you might say roadblock, or maybe that's the wrong term. Maybe, filter would be a good term. Filter for teachers. There's a word that we use here, acharya, which means teacher generally, but more specifically it means a teacher who teaches by example. So not just one who knows all of the verses from Bhagavad Gita, not just someone who can teach you a lesson, but someone who, when you observe them and speak to them, watch them speak to other people, watch them interact, you can see the example of how you would like to live, how you would like to be. And so it's a good sort of filter for, anybody who basically says one thing and does another thing.
Then third qualification, he or she should have heard from their bona fide teachers. Because otherwise there will be many misinterpretation. The knowledge is preserved through a disciplic succession. The confidential understanding of knowledge comes down through a disciplic succession, a bona fide succession. So he must have heard. One cannot be a professor unless he has learned from a professor. He hears from a succession, he practices it, he repeats exactly, and then Bhagavatam says a bona fide teacher, he should have taught multiple times the same teachings. And then we can say that, okay, this person I can believe.
So they should have the experience
of teaching also.
The way that a surgeon, for example, has to go through all of the necessary schooling and get the degrees that they need to be a surgeon. But then they also have to have the practice of doing surgery, of training, and they have to have, for certain surgeries, the more complicated they get, I believe, you have to have more experience, more training leading up to it.
And finally, the best teacher he must be a pure devotee of the Lord. In our tradition, we call him by the name Krishna. Lord Chaitanya, one of the great personality, he mentioned one who has perfect understanding of divine, he is a perfect teacher. Otherwise, what are we going to teach? When we don't know, what can we teach? It's a lot of qualifications.
I guess there's a lot of places we could go, or a lot of questions I could ask. One that jumps to my mind is, how do we recognize such a teacher, such a person? How can we tell?
First, we can test the teacher. How do we test? Seeing him, observing him, hearing from him, and see if he speaks by his mind or if he speaks authorized. And then slowly, it's a relationship that builds over time. One example, my spiritual master, his name is Radhanath Swami. So one personality came to him and he would ask so many questions again and again, over and over, and for many years. Then later on Maharaj said, then at some point of time he accepted him as a spiritual master, but it was a training time for a long time. So when he asked for initiation, which is like accepting a spiritual master officially, then Maharaj said, you have been testing me for so many years. Now it's my time to test you. So it's a gradual process. Then how do we know if we meet a bona fide teacher? It depends upon our own substance. If we are really seeker and if we are really eager, the nature, the divine will make arrangement for us.
So this puts the responsibility back onto us.
Am I sincere?
How much do I really want to gain a spiritual understanding?
How much hungry I am? Then you will meet, you will be convinced, you will try to follow, you will experience, and everything will gradually happen in your life. Because our progress is also based on if the divine sanctions. But if we are sincere, there is a saying, God help those who help themselves. It said that it begins with faith. I want it. I want to go deeper. I want to understand. And then the nature, the divine will arrange good association. In good association, we get to know the path, understanding. And by walking that path, we become purified. When we become purified, everything is revealed from within our heart. And when it's revealed from within our heart, and as we become purified, we can see the heart transformation. Our conviction will grow. And it's not a snap. It's a path. That's the way to gain knowledge. I have one more verse that speaks about gaining knowledge. It comes in chapter 10. Beautiful, beautiful verse. And this is verse number 11. To show them special mercy, Krishna is speaking. To show them special mercy. Sometimes we think, what is mercy? So Krishna is telling, what is my special mercy? Krishna is telling, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Krishna dispels the ignorance from our heart and illuminates our heart with knowledge. That shows his knowledge is not something acquired externally, but it is an illumination that comes from within our heart. And that is a special mercy of the Lord. And the previous verse, Krishna says to show them special mercy. Who are those? Krishna says them special mercy. Who is Krishna referring to? Krishna says, those who are constantly devoted to serving, those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So those who are serving, Krishna shows them special mercy by giving them knowledge and removing the darkness from the heart.
And this is the understanding of the bhakti path.
Yes.
Serving with love.
Love.
And that brings knowledge.
That brings knowledge. And how to serve with love? Spiritual master. So they both work together. He speaks, we render service, submissive inquiry, we start following. Krishna sees we started following. He shows us mercy from within, and then he removes darkness, and it completes the cycle. So what we heard, now it is revealed to us from within our heart, and that grows our faith in whom we heard from. And then we hear further, and further ignorance is removed. This is a cycle of gaining knowledge, and it happens gradually.
I like in the discussion of knowledge, a lot of it actually focuses on who you get the knowledge from. I think in a spiritual sense, knowledge is just a very different thing than how we might typically think of it. It's, as you're describing, it's not something that you simply do X, Y, Z step or just read this book and then you will have the knowledge and then you will be able to tell people the knowledge. That's what we were describing earlier as theoretical understanding. And spiritual knowledge is it's a different concept entirely.
Very deep, very sublime. Krishna says pure, very pure.
One thing that I can appreciate as well, I not personally having a spiritual master, but knowing many people who do, and having the privilege of having met some. You talk about how a student has to accept a guru, a teacher, and the guru has to accept the student. So nobody's hand is forced in the matter, and each one has to look at the other one as they really are and accept them.
Correct.
The student has to say, I've been observing you, I've spoken to you, I know what which line of succession you're in, I know who your teacher was, I know what that teacher taught, and I know who their teacher was and what that teacher taught. And I want you to teach me.
And the knowledge is precisely preserved. Like you hear from, say, like Radhanath Maharaj. You hear from Srila Prabhupada. You hear from his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Then we don't have recordings, but you read the books by all the previous teachers. Very precisely preserved. To the point. Everyone is repeating the same thing. So you can see the power of a succession. No contradiction. Precisely pure. And you practice and you taste the fruit.
Very nice. What more can I say?
Sublime.
Would you want to maybe switch to talking about knowledge in the modes of goodness for a little bit, Prabhuji? Or do you have anything else to say regarding teachers and the acquiring of knowledge?
If you're just sincere, eager, just a matter of time, all arrangements will be made for us. Inspiration comes from within us. And when that comes, you cannot stop.
So knowledge really has everything to do with the intention that we bring to it. And what we really, if we want it, that you're talking about, we have to listen eagerly to a teacher. We have to really want to hear what they have to say. We have to continue on a process, and that it's really just something that happens inside when we're ready for it and when we want it.
Our sincerity is in practicing what we have heard. When we hear, when we practice, then revelation starts. So there is a responsibility of a student. Eagerness.
So if that sort of describes knowledge and goodness, seeing the undivided nature of everything, or working towards that, and then you mentioned that passion is, or knowledge and passion is seeing everything as separate individual entities.
Something more. Knowledge and passion. You see everything with a desire to enjoy. Knowledge and goodness. You see everything without a desire for sense gratification. Can I read a verse?
Of course.
This is from chapter 4, verse number 18, which is the name of chapter is Transcendental Knowledge. Verse number 19. One is understood to be in full knowledge. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. Think about it. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid from a desire of sense gratification.
Why is that?
When we see something from a spiritual perspective, the vision is divine. When we see something from a material perspective, the desire is to enjoy. For example, a boy and a girl. You see somebody from a physical perspective. Now you want to enjoy. But if you see them as part and parcel of divine, a spirit soul, there is no desire to enjoy.
What is the desire then for? What would we desire in that case?
It's a spiritual vision. You see them, they are also searching for true happiness, engaged in this particular body. And everyone is hankering for that divine experience, that divine relationship. You see everything connected to the divine. It's a spiritual vision.
And you want that other being to also experience that. You want them to be happy.
A person true knowledge sees everything from an equal vision. No distinction from physical platform. Mode of passion is always I am the center. I am the enjoyer. Oh, I see this animal, it tastes nice. I can have a relationship with this person or this animal. Me in the center.
What can I get from them?
And then I dislike this person. And I like this person. It's passion means differentiated vision with me in the center.
And the phrase sense gratification, it's somewhat self-explanatory, but basically, wanting to see things that you like for your pleasure, wanting to taste things that you enjoy for your pleasure, etc. What else would we? I'm not sure how to phrase this question exactly, but what else would we do? Might be a thought that comes up to somebody's head, Just so, for example, like if I really think about it, all I really engage in is trying to see things I want to see, hear things I want to hear.
See a flower,
Yeah.
let me try to smell.
Yeah.
Let me try to go to a place which has beautiful flowers. The entire vision is surcharged with passion.
So if I realize that I'm a part of the whole spiritual nature, when I'm enjoying the scent of a flower, it's not with the thought that I, a separate entity, a separate being, am enjoying this scent of the flower. It's that I, who am a part of this whole spiritual being, am enjoying it for the sake of the whole spiritual being. Is that right?
This plant is a spirit soul engaged in a plant body because of the past karma of this plant. This plant will be delivered if it is offered to the divine. How can I use everything in the purpose of what it is actually meant for? Or, oh, I like it. Oh, I hate this. It's knowledge, but then it's knowledge in passion. Everything we see, but we see from the perspective of me.
One other point I would just bring up that is mentioned in the purports or the commentary of these two verses on goodness and passion. Knowledge and goodness leads one to an understanding of the eternal nature of spirit or of the soul. If we see everything as one in that way, we can understand that life is much more than just our life. That we truly are a part of life as a whole, rather than as just being this little individual life that pops up and then goes back down. And in passion, we don't have that kind of vision. So we only see the temporary nature of each physical being.
You see this flower as a flower. You see this flower or anything you see connected to the divine and spiritual nature. Now when we see from spiritual nature, we are seeing beyond physicals. So we are in true knowledge. But when we see externally...
So what is knowledge in ignorance then?
Krishna says knowledge and ignorance, when we become overly consumed with one desire, which is not very significant from a global perspective.
What might be an example of that?
For somebody, it may be just the wealth and the business, and my whole life centered around how to make this business successful. Now he has understanding of his business. He's working very hard in that direction, but he's consumed by one desire, which is not very significant because all the results are temporary by nature. But the whole life centered around that one thing. And
this is very, very interesting to me, because from what a spiritual teacher would tell you is, at least I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you being the spiritual teacher here, to me anyway, you can say you're a spiritual teacher to me. They would say that there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to run a business that's successful. Correct? There's nothing wrong with being in business.
But then what is the motive?
But why? Yeah. But why are you really doing it? And what are your priorities?
What do you want to do with a successful business? You want everything so that you can lose everything at one point of time, because body is temporary.
Mm. Yeah. Is your goal in life to have a successful business? Or is your goal in life something else? Is it happiness, or is it knowledge, or something beyond?
So I think
Mm.
when we see everything from a spiritual perspective, we are living a life of knowledge.
One question I have on the other side then is, can we lose knowledge the way that we can forget what we read? Can spiritual knowledge be lost in a way like that?
Thank you. Two discussion on this. Quick discussion. One is, the spiritual advancement can never be lost, but it can temporarily be forgotten. Two reasons that can help us, that can degrade us. One is bad association, and one is offenses. Bad association can distract us from true purpose in life. And offenses, not a topic for today. But offenses can halt. We will be covered by bewilderment, illusory energy again. It's something comes from within. It's something that can be lost within us also. And then we cannot see things as they are. It's something awarded. It's something that can be taken away. But it's only a halt. And then once the impact of the offenses are over, then we again resume from there. So halt is possible. Complete degradation is not possible. Any progress made is eternal. And if we are careful, this life we can make our life successful.
So using that example of the lantern or the light in the heart that becomes illuminated, once it becomes illuminated to a certain extent, we can't unsee those things we've seen.
Yes.
You could use that example maybe in the real world. If there's a light somewhere and you can see a certain amount of things around that light, you know what's there now.
Yes.
The light might dim again or go out, but you know what's there. So you, in that sense, you can't lose that knowledge. You can only forget it, or the light can go away. So you don't see it anymore.
You don't see it, but eventually you will again start from where you left off.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. This is such a wide topic, and I'm sure we will talk about knowledge a lot more in future episodes. But I certainly found this talk to be very illuminating. I'm glad I listened a lot to you.
Thank you, Brett Prabhu, and thank you to the audience for
Thank
joining
you
today.
See you next time.